Rick, how you doing?
Good morning, Keith. I'm great. How about yourself?
Great to see you, man.
I always love seeing you in the morning because I get up and I know that you've been up for like 4 hours and you've done 20 miles on the bike, and it reminds me of the good old days. And it's just refreshing to be with somebody so healthy.
Oh, thank you so much, Rick. Thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Those were good times. And I know that, when I think of you, that you've already been active, during the day and that morning. Tim and I often talk about, how much you inspire us. And we're like, man, Rick's got to keep going because he's showing us what's possible. so, so,
Oh
you know,
man. Well, that's
so
good motivation.
hey, no pressure. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. So I thought we'd do a podcast, and the topic is going to be get out of the habit of struggling over everything.
Hmm.
And this is inspired by just a reflection about how much, as Keith 1.0, I made a problem out of things that were not problems. I mean, and that's almost everything, that there's a problem. There is at some level, there is often a resistance to reality, to what is really happening. So you get a flat tire, you're upset about it. Well, you just created problem number two. Problem number one is a flat tire. Problem number two is you being upset about it. You still got a flat tire. So there's this idea of the low-hanging fruit, right? To start to practice with. And then you can make it to where you don't struggle over hardly anything. And so my biggest struggles were almost always over the low-hanging fruit, things that I couldn't control, things that were 100% cost and no benefit. A great example is the weather. Being upset about the weather, which I have absolutely no control over. And then to say something crazy like, it didn't rain today, because it was my birthday, it was my wedding day. Trust me, Mother Nature did not consider your birthday or your wedding for it not to rain. So it's not personal. And if it rains, it rains. But that's where you can practice acceptance. But people struggle over things as the low-hanging fruit, like the weather. Another example of it is, you mentioned this before, traffic, right? Like traffic is not personal, it's indiscriminate, but people struggle over that. You're in traffic. As a matter of fact, if you're out in it, you're part of the traffic for someone else. But don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. Traffic is a problem. So what I've started to do is that the minute that voice starts to say, I don't like this, or this is the problem, or it shouldn't be this way, I'm aware that here I am making a struggle out of something else. And that the path, at least for me, is to, get out of the habit over struggling over everything. And once I become proficient at the low-hanging fruit, the other things that show up, I can stop making those a struggle too. When I not lost my job, but when my contract ended, and so I was no longer getting paid at Mayo Clinic, like, because of all the practice with the weather, with people not saying hello back or thanking me for something, with traffic, all the practice with that low-hanging fruit prepared me for something that was a little bit more, on the edge, like not having a job and not struggling over that too, not worrying, not ruminating, taking action, like looking for a job, still trying to improve my skills, like all the things that were in my control. I did that, but I've been getting out of the habit of struggling over everything. Rick, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I agree, Keith. I think we all still struggle that way. We want things to be a certain way, right? And when they're not a certain way, then we don't like it. And there's no one to complain to usually who's going to give you any sympathy. So you do it to yourself. So I think one of the things that taught me about the dichotomy between the actual event and what my reaction was to it was being with someone who seemed to be just completely built out of Teflon. No matter what happened to this guy, it was just nothing. I mean, he literally took everything in stride, and he'd kind of have a little wry smile about it, like, okay, let's see how we're going to handle this. And what he taught me was that there's basically in every phenomena, as you pointed out when you started speaking, there's two things that happen. There's the stimulus, and then there's the response.
Right.
There's the clock, and
Uh-huh.
then reacting to the clock.
Right.
So the idea is that if we could just start out by separating the two, for example, the traffic situation, or people not saying hello or not thanking you, if we could just begin by saying, okay, the stimulus is the traffic, and my response is, what's going on with that person? They don't like me. What do I do to get them to like me? I never liked him. I'm glad we're not talking. So you have the stimulus, and then you have all those things that dribble out that are a reaction to it. If you can just get to the point where you're recognizing what is the stimulus and what is the response, we can start hammering away at getting rid of the responses that cause that residual pain that you're talking about. So most of, I think, things that happen to me in my life are created by me. They're not created by an external. There may be a stimulus, usually is, but the response is mine. You can't see it, but over my shoulder here, I've got my dining room table full of papers and files. I mean, literally, there's probably 2,000 pages of stuff that's in disarray. It's been that way for 2 weeks because right now I'm going through a procrastination situation. And I've realized that, time basically is irrelevant. I keep thinking I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. It's been that way for 2 weeks. And so my thought is that really what I've done is I've created this almost sense of sleeplessness at night, thinking about my dining room table, groaning from all of the papers that have to be put in their proper place. And things have to be studied and learned, and I have to be ready for this case. But at the moment, I'm going through this notion that, it's terrible. I don't have any time to do it. And it's all a lie. Something I tell myself. And it's interesting. It's still not strong enough for me to sit down and do it, but it will be. My point is, I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it. I'm not in a red zone yet. The trial isn't tomorrow. But the idea is that's a simple example of something that causes you worry, the idea that you have to do more work and the work is ready for you and you have to do it. And our response, I can't do it. I don't have enough time. I need to be perfect at it and all of that stuff. But if you can react to the idea that that's self-created and that's really not the table, that's not the papers, they're just papers and a table. Your value that you put on that is what's killing it.
Yes.
Well, it's killing me.
No, Rick, I love that. I mean, you gave great examples, and I love the person who you spoke about before, who was just this great example and inspiration to you, who was like Teflon, like nothing seems to phase them. And I love being around people like that don't make an issue of things. And I think that, our band of friends who, we consider that are, on a similar path and journey, that we get to watch them, do this on a regular basis. I've seen you do it, not be bothered by things that are outside of your control. I've seen Tim and Matt and Pete and Brian all do the same thing. And it's just beautiful, man. I've done it in I mentioned the job situation. I've done it with school. I've done it with my relationships. I've friendships. I've done it at one point, and typically what's happened for me before was I feel eventually the suffering gets to that red zone point where you're like, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah.
And what is different is before, when I've had enough, I'm out trying to fix it, manipulate, do something else, or I'm withdrawing from it, or withdrawing from my connections and doing all that kind of passive aggressive behavior. And now I don't do any of that, because all of that is trying to do something on the outside to remedy or resolve an issue that is on the inside. This is not an outside job. The papers on the like you said, there was just papers on the table, right? The struggle is inside. And the same thing with somebody not saying hello to me or not thanking me for something. That's an internal struggle. I can do something about the internal struggle. And that's not to say that you don't take action for things that are external, but you understand the difference. And I think, this path that we're on is one in which continues to heighten our ability to make that distinction between what is internal and what is external. And as you pointed out, almost all of it is internal.
Yeah.
The world is showing up like the world shows up, but we're the one who makes it a problem. And so I'm just really happy that I've gotten on this thing of not making everything a struggle, like going to see your parents, being whatever, and what they're going to eat and what they're not going to eat, or this, or we got lost and they didn't look at the map and they should have listened to me and all this, and on and on and on it goes. Get out of the habit of making everything a struggle. Go ahead, Rick. I want you to close this out.
Last thing I would say is that the idea of the struggle is not only self-imposed, but it's perpetuated because we continue to have the judgments about it. Like the judgment I have with my papers on the desk that you can't see is I'm going to fail at putting this together properly, or I'm not going to do the best job at it, or it's too much for me to master. And all of these things about self-doubt, all of those are just judgments, right? They're just judgments. So again, if we get back to the analysis of separating the stimulus from the response, if we can just take the judgment out of it and do it. So, so I'm great at self-counseling here. We'll see what happens after the camera turns off if I sit down and actually do it. But I know what the remedy is. The remedy is just do the work and don't have any judgment about it. It's not that hard. Say hello to people, and if they don't say back, that's their issue. Right. Be in traffic, and if somebody cuts you off, they're having a bad day. I mean, all of those choices are available to us, and never, ever has to be a struggle. I mean, it is, because we're built to want things a certain way. If we give up the wanting to be a certain way, we're okay. In other words, with my papers, if I give up wanting to watch football all day, if I give that up and do the work without judging it, I'm in a better spot, and I don't go through all of the struggle of, whoa, there's too much and all of that nonsense.
Right. God, I love it, Rick. Awesome. Hey, thank you for a great show. I love you.
Hey, thanks for showing up and including me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I love it. It's a gift, man. Thank you so much.
Adios.
Adios.